Governments love to tell you they are working for your financial freedom. They talk about stability, growth, and opportunity for everyone. But if you peel back the layers of history, you find a much darker repeating pattern. It's a story where the average person is left holding the bag, while wealth and power quietly concentrate at the very top. These aren't new tricks. They've been around for centuries, just recycled, repackaged, and given fancy new names. But the underlying goal, it's always been the same. Funnel wealth upwards and keep the majority dependent on a system they do not control. Let's start with the oldest trick in the book, inflation. Picture this. A government is spending way more money than it's bringing in through taxes. It has two main choices. It can raise taxes, but that's politically dangerous. Nobody likes seeing their taxes go up. The other choice is quieter, sneakier. It can devalue its own currency. This means every single dollar, euro, or pound in your pocket buys a little bit less. Ancient Rome were absolute masters of this. By the 3rd century AD, the Roman emperors were drowning in military expenses. So what did they do? They started messing with their money. The denarius, which was once a coin of almost pure silver, began to have less and less silver in it. They replaced it with cheaper metals like bronze and just gave it a thin silver coating. The government pretended everything was fine, that these new coins were just as good as the old ones. But the people felt the pain. Suddenly, merchants demanded more coins for the same amount of bread or wine. Prices skyrocketed. If you had saved a stash of denarii, its value evaporated. Your life savings were wiped out, not by a thief in the night, but by your own government. It was a silent tax on the entire population. And guess what? This exact trick is still in play today, just executed by modern central banks with digital ledgers instead of bronze coins. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and we see a new variation on the theme, forced lending. Kings and queens across Europe, in places like England, France, and Spain, constantly needed cash for their wars and extravagant lifestyles. So they would turn to wealthy merchants, guilds, and bankers and request a loan. But this wasn't a request you could refuse. Saying no could mean facing crippling fines, having your property seized, or even worse, the crown would promise to pay it all back, with interest, of course. But those promises were often broken. Repayments would be late, paid back with devalued currency, or sometimes they just never came at all. The rulers got their money to fund their armies and build their palaces, while the lenders, who were often the backbone of the economy, were left powerless. This coercion was cleverly disguised as a patriotic duty, a way to support your king and country. And for centuries it worked. By the 17th century, the system itself became the ultimate trick. Take the founding of the Bank of England in 1694. This wasn't some act of public service. The British government was desperate for money to fight a war against France, so they came up with a brilliant plan. They invited a group of wealthy investors to loan the government money by buying its bonds. In return, the Crown guaranteed a steady stream of interest payments. Sounds like a fair deal, right? A win-win. But here's the catch. Where did the money for those interest payments come from? It came from taxes. And not taxes on the wealthy investors, but taxes on everyday goods that ordinary people couldn't avoid buying. Things like salt, beer, soap, and cloth. So the poor and the middle class shouldered the cost. Their money was collected through taxes and then funneled directly to the rich bondholders as risk-free profit. It was a perfect legal mechanism for transferring wealth upward, all under the respectable banner of national finance. It is a pattern that has been perfected and is still deeply embedded in our financial systems today. Now let's jump to our modern era. You might think we've moved past these old, crude methods, but the tricks have only become more sophisticated, more complex, and harder to spot. We have things like deficit spending, where governments spend money they don't have, racking up colossal debts that future generations will have to pay. We have bailouts. When massive corporations or banks make reckless bets and fail, who steps in to save them? The government, using taxpayer money. The profits are privatized, but the losses are socialized. You pay for their mistakes. Then there's quantitative easing, a fancy term for central banks creating vast sums of new money out of thin air, which pumps up the value of assets like stocks and real estate, primarily benefiting those who already own them while devaluing the cash in your savings account. And don't forget stealth taxation. These are the hidden taxes, like inflation, that eat away at your purchasing power without you ever seeing a line item on a tax form. And then there's the web of complex regulations, often written in ways that benefit large, established players and create barriers for smaller competitors. All of these modern tools, from bailouts to quantitative easing, serve the exact same purpose as Rome's debased coins or a king's forced loan. They shift the financial burden from the elites onto the masses, all while maintaining a convincing illusion of fairness and necessity. The government will always have a good story. They'll say they're doing it to ensure stability, to promote growth, or to protect the vulnerable. But the result is always the same: a massive transfer of wealth hidden in plain sight. So what's the lesson here? The lesson from thousands of years of history is crystal clear. These financial manipulations are not an accident. They are a feature of the system. Rome debased its coins. Monarchs forced their subjects to lend them money. Modern states print, borrow, and tax by stealth. The mechanism is fundamentally unchanged. The biggest tragedy is that most people will live their entire lives caught in these traps without ever realizing it. They accept inflation as a natural part of the economy. They see taxes as an unavoidable duty. They might even view bailouts for the super-rich as a necessary evil to save the system. This ignorance is the most powerful tool the system has. It's what allows the game to continue, generation after generation. This is why financial education is an act of resistance. Understanding economic history is your weapon. When you learn to recognize these patterns, you begin to see the traps before you fall into them. You can start making decisions to protect yourself, your family, and your wealth. Never just assume that the system is designed to serve you. It's designed to serve itself and to protect those at the top. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but human nature and the temptations of power are constant. And if you choose to ignore the lessons of history, it will, without a doubt, crush you. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. We've got a lot more to uncover. See you in the next one.